I was answering your question, the one, and as I said, there are geologists, there are astrophysicists.
So experts. So experts then.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah,
experts out there. Is Katz an astrophysicist or geologist?
No.
So he's not a fucking expert then, is he?
No.
So what's your objection again? So our discussion is about how Katz is an fucking expert. He's an ex-school teacher. He used to teach kids. Now he's turned YouTuber. Now, given that I'm in the minority here, I have no issue whatsoever labelling myself an expert, given that there's no flat earth department in a university to get myself accreditation for the expert status I've assigned myself. So I'm going to call myself a fucking expert. You don't have to like that. But Katz, on the other hand, is just one of many, 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 many wankers who like to call themselves an expert, in spite of the fact there's fucking departments that can give them expert status. Like you've just listed. I'd like one of them. Do you have to repeat that question a few times to him?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Sleeping Warrior. He made a video of it where we done like a drink counter. So every time that I asked him to answer the question, he said we'll always get back to it, and he's not trying to swerve it, I promise. And every time he said something to not avoid answering the question, he then he added up to about 20 odd drinks, about 20 times he swerved me, or maybe more, can't remember. But yeah, it was painful because for a whole hour when it was on the debate live, that was the time to talk about it for us to get into that actual principle. But he didn't actually give me an answer until the debate was over and the people in the questions, and that said something. He said something that obviously I would have been able to rebuttal if he actually made that position when I asked him an hour earlier.
So are you saying that as a result, that debate point didn't seem to appear to be won, basically?
Yeah, basically, what I went in there for, I didn't get to actually get into because he got me to dance around on every other topic, explaining about what my understanding of like gas and pressure, and because he meant there was a massive difference between pressurized gas and gas pressure.
I see.
And I said there's still gas pressure, and he said no, they're not. So like basically, I want to sit there arguing about whether I think gas
pressure. I said no, there's not. So in other words, demonstrated intellectual dishonesty and lied about the circumstances being debated about.
Yeah.
I see. You see, the reason I bring this up, Tommy, is because a chap got in touch with me called Pat Brittenden, and he's claiming to have like 1 million views a day. He's a New Zealander, right? And he asked me if I wanted to debate. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll go on your platform. You're popular, and I'll debate. And he came back to me and said, I've got debate partner Katz lined up. And I raised a series of objections with this guy. The main one being that when I've debated Katz, I've had to put no less than 80 renditions of the same point. Coincidentally, the same point you're talking about now. Having to repeat, 20, 25 times? And the point doesn't get won. Now, in response to this Pat Brittenden guy is like, it'll be a fair debate, even though I'm absolutely unequivocally biased in favour of this cartoon character I'm going to put in front of you, who is not a globe expert and is in fact a school teacher who turned YouTuber and now goes out with an anti-flat earth rhetoric, ignoring points in excess of 80 times. Yeah? So trying to get this across to somebody who's obviously biased in favour of a globe, this host, Pat Brittenden, he refuses. I've now given him 5 renditions of this point that we're now discussing, Tommy. That when it comes to somebody who's an anti-flat earther like Katz, you have to point out to somebody who's intending to utilise their abilities in debate that they don't allow debating points to be won by way of intellectual dishonesty, ignorance of the point, that would be to ignore the point completely, and diversionary tactics away from subject matters which are having to be repeated again and again and again instead of being conceded. Am I correct, Tommy, in my frustration with this particular host who's essentially lined up somebody who is unreasonable and incapable of actually generating a decent discussion or debate with?
I mean, at the end of the day, when I first came across you, I never knew absolutely who you was, didn't know nothing about you. You give me a chance to speak my shit. I spoke my shit. You then criticised me on it. I then had to go do some homework. I came back. I could see these certain points. I made progress. I then went back to the globe. Do you know what I mean? So you was always a hostile to me. There was always a hostile. So it was never like there was any favors and everything like that. But if you can't answer somebody, it takes more humility to just admit that you can't answer it. But rather than they admit that, they would rather get you on a goose chase. And in the end,
what I wish?
The only way you can demonstrate gas pressure without a container is to have an Earth without a container. And I says, well, you've got one. He says, yeah, but I need a container the size of the atmosphere. Well, a container. So you still need a container to demonstrate it. He doesn't get it.
Tommy, do you remember when he actually fixed the question for you? He said, what you really mean is not how do you have gas pressure without a container. It's how do you have pressurized gas without a container. Remember when he fixed the question?
Yeah. How he's trying to change pressurized gas pressure to pressurized. He says to see the difference between gas pressure and pressurized gas. I said, well, they both got gas pressure. He went, no, they're different. I goes, well, unless you can tell me the difference between that, I can't answer that question. I said, like, after an hour of chasing you around, you're really going to fucking say that at the end of it, that, unless I know the difference in gas, with some little semantical little bullshit thing where I'm still right with my instinct. My instinct was right. They're pretty much the same thing. Gas pressure, pressurized gas, still gas pressure. And he said, no. So he then put doubt into my own response, and actually was actually incorrect, a correct statement to respond to it. He then tried to throw doubt on my actual instincts because common sense will take you to pressurized gas, and gas pressure. They're still going to have gas pressure, so they're both fucking the same thing.
Exactly. Shit. That's why I would have asked him. Okay, if that's really the question, so then how do you have pressurized gas without a container?
Yeah. I asked him that. Yeah, I asked him that.
Hold on, you asked him that. So, in other words, this was part of one of the obfuscations and renditions where he's repositioned the question. You've then gone along with his repositioning of the question, asked him the exact same thing that he said that you should be asking, and then did you get an answer? Or did it just result in another repetition of the same question?
He said, until you know the difference between pressurized and gas pressure, I don't think it's best that we go into that. Like he was trying to use his kind of like a degree, his academics to kind of hide behind it, trying to say, well, just because you don't know that's like, if you can't even do a simple jump, then there's no point trying to do a long jump. Do you know what I mean?
I see.
That's smart.
Sort of like Ernesto.
Well, it's sort of like conspiracy cats, because this is who we're talking about, because I'm going to trim this out and send this to this guy, this biased guy with a globe belief, who seems to be hell-bent on getting me to be convinced, without any address to any of my responses, which are pretty much hinged around what we're discussing here, in objection to conspiracy cats as an opponent. This is what you deal with when you're dealing with anti-flat earth teachers come YouTubers as opposed to globe experts. They can just tell you that they're not going to address your question because you don't know the difference between pressurized gas and gas at pressure, which are the same thing. But if you can't describe the difference between them, you're not going to have the discussion. See, that's an unreasonable opponent. And I think we'll all agree that that's something that should be addressed if they're potentially going to become your opponent and you faced them before, as Tommy and I both have.
Right. Well, people like conspiracy cats, they don't really actually do it for the win in a technical sense. Their main strategy as an anti-flat earther specifically is to wear you out, to drain you, to keep... Basically, in their mind, you're in a chair with a spotlight on you. They have full control, and they'll just mind control, torture you until you give up.
Not no more. I'm sorry.
But that's what they always try, though. They don't even really try to win anymore because they know.
Maybe in the beginning.
Neil,
can you stop rumpusing?
Sorry.
Right. But that's what I see. They just wear you out every time, because anytime you start to take any argument serious or they give you a halfway concession, as soon as you then take that halfway concession and remind them that their entire argument is flawed, then they don't want it. They just gave you the concession because they wanted to be nice and move on. They never want to get to the real argument. They never do, because they know they've lost and they can never win.
And at the time, he danced around it.
Go ahead, Neil.
No, I was just going to say, they had the upper hand in the beginning, but not anymore. They don't. They tread lightly. They don't go into a debate now feeling like they have the upper hand. So I guess you are right, Owen, in a way.
They can just red herring and straw man scattergun you until infinity. They have so many of these standardized
I don't mind.
questions.
Sorry, Aaron, sorry.
That's it. They just have so much ammo.
Go ahead, Tommy.
That was terrible. 2 car crashes there. I was gonna say, fucking something about the Globers. I don't tend to see, both positions. I don't tend to hold anyone. Like for example, Nathan has a go at me. It's water for ducks back, because all I'm interested in is the argument valid or not, and that's what I bring to them, and I tell them what your arguments are, and they still try to demonize me, and yet I bring that I was particularly the messenger to the argument to literally differentiate that, so they can't just attack the character, because usually when you bring up the question, it's, oh, you only heard it from them. Why would you listen to Nathan Oakley when there's experts out there telling you different? I'm thinking to myself, well, it makes perfect sense that somebody that that would basically be someone with common sense that would probably come up with these rebuttals, because most people that are academical, that they kind of just have to follow the academics, and that's kind of like, that's part of the procedure. They don't kind of you don't really get academical people that try to fight their academics, because they lose their job.
Right. This is something that I, again, tried to cover with this Pat guy as an objection. What I want is a globe expert. Because the anti-flat earthers, like your Simon Dans and your conspiracy cats and your insert cartoon name here, they've got no accountability to their field of expertise. Because they're not experts in this field. And they will appeal to random ethereal experts in the globe whenever needed. So it's like, I want that. I want the random ethereal expert in the globe to debate against if I'm going to leave my so-called echo chamber, where anybody like these cartoon characters are welcome, but they don't come. So they've got an open door, and they're perfectly willing to sometimes interact with us. Maybe, if we'll take their bait of their quote-unquote neutral platforms. But if I'm going to go further yonder into a big audience, get me an expert. So that the dick cartoon character's not going to appeal to some expert that isn't sat in front of me debating me. I want the expert. It's not that unreasonable a request, but apparently cartoon characters with no name, who are YouTubers after being school teachers for kids, they're the expert. That's the standard, is it? Oh yeah, apparently there's about 7 billion globe believers out there, but that's the lowest standard you can scrape the bottom of the barrel with. Ex-school teacher turned cartoon character, wonderful standard. Now get an expert.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I don't mind what position anyone holds. If you're a flat earther or if you're a glober, I don't see why it has to be like people have to attack the person. Doesn't matter who the argument's coming from. Just let's see who's right, who's wrong. You know what I mean? And I find that a lot of globers do tend to think, oh, because you're a flat earther or because you don't accept what's been said, automatically demonize and automatically categorize to aid their defense, so they don't listen to anything you say, because they'll categorize you as like a conspiratard or crazy person. Then anything, then they won't take anything you say seriously. But it's completely that's the defense mechanism that they've embedded into their subconscious. All this from listening to you, and you're not an expert apparently, and I've learned so much about the arguments and like the terminology and the stuff, because you literally drill it into them. And when you're lecturing them, I'm actually just being lectured myself, because I'm thinking, all right, okay. And I'm thinking, well, we'll go from there. And I'd like them to concede so we can move to the next point, because I want to get to the actual finale, because I'm pretty sure there's more to go. But they're just too scared to go there with you and admit when they're wrong,
Exactly. I'm so glad you're here, because that's exactly the point I'm making over and over again, repeating it time and time again to this guy who wants to have me on his show. And obviously I've, gone, yeah, I want to be on your show. And like you say, you don't want the same point 80 times. You want to move on. You want a concession so you can move on. Not a confusing obfuscation, or being told that if you don't define the difference between gas pressure and pressurised gas, the question's not getting asked, or some other unreasonable crap. Those things don't make for good discussion and debate. They certainly don't make for either side winning the point. It means that one point obfuscates away, and then the next one's hopefully ushered in by the person that's obfuscated it, which we see all the time. Hence me wanting an expert, because then they've got a rhetoric that they've got to stick to, because it's their career and their ass if they don't.
What kind of expert would you want?
Say again?
Neil deGrasse Tyson would be good, wouldn't he?
Hold on a second, Tommy. Okay. Sovereign Pizza, go ahead.
Oh, I just was
Cinder.
asking like one. Yeah, Cinder. Yeah. So I was just asking what kind of expert would you want? Like, I mean, there is no globe. There is no globe expert, right? I mean, experts usually are people who who put a lot of time in the topic or in the work they do, and so they become experts by.
Sounds like you're explaining Nathan to me. Sounds like you're explaining like Nathan and Quantum Eraser. That's what it sounds like.
So you're telling me there's no astrophysics departments?
No, I just was wondering if you would
Sorry,
want to talk.
I just ask again rather than you brushing past my point. So there's not an astrophysics department. What are they? Just keep talking through it after brushing past it the first time. I'll try and get it through once to you. So there's not a department in the university dedicated to this subject then?
Oh, I was answering your question, the one, and as I said, there are geologists, there are astrophysicists.
So experts. Then.
Yeah.
So there's experts out there. Is Katz an astrophysicist or geologist?
No.
So he's not a fucking expert then, is he?
No.
So what's your objection again, twat?
That's why I...
Twat! So our discussion is about how Katz isn't a fucking expert. He's an ex-school teacher who used to teach kids. Now he's turned YouTuber. Now, given that I'm in the minority here, I have no issue whatsoever labelling myself an expert, given that there's no flat earth department in a university to get myself accreditation for the expert status I've assigned myself. So I'm going to call myself a fucking expert. You don't have to like that. But Katz, on the other hand, is just one of many, 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 many wankers who like to call themselves an expert in spite of the fact there's fucking departments that can give them expert status. Like you've just listed. I'd like one of them.
So you basically...
So I'd like one of them, wanker. Yeah, I'd like a fucking expert to debate me. You aren't that.
You're a fucking idiot.
You're a dick. Like Katz, you're a cartoon character. I've never seen your face. I don't know your name. I can't research you. I can't study your accreditation. I can't see how much of an expert you are. You are a faceless wanker. Like Katz, just a twat with a name and no expertise in the matters that I debate. Experts in tactics and obfuscation and ignoring the same point 80 times. Definitely not an expert.
It's funny how you just...
I don't give a fuck what you find funny. You're just a faceless dick.
Nathan already told you the answer to the question, and then you then asked him the question again after he already gave you the answer again.
It didn't.
He did. He
No.
said...
What's an expert? You told me which departments would give someone expert status. You told me that. I've answered your question, dickhead.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, did. You told me where they'd get expert status.
I asked you...
You told me where they'd get expert status, and I agreed with you. There's definitely places to acquire this expertise and get accredited for it. And me, I don't have that luxury in my particular minority, because I'm definitely in the minority here. So I don't think it's unreasonable, given the vast swathes of wankers who'd like to label themselves experts, in spite of the fact there's somewhere they can get expert status. That's who I want. Second time.
So basically no answer. Thank you very much.
What? I want an expert and the expert status that you assign to these people, given their expert qualifications from a particular field in a particular university, doesn't count as experts anymore, because you came up with the idea. I didn't label them as experts, you did.
I never labeled anybody as expert.
All right, well, you tell me then. So no astrophysics, no astrophysics departments in universities then. That was my original question.
Of course there are astrophysics departments.
All right, so experts. What about geologists? You came up with that one too, didn't you?
So you want any of those?
Oh, an expert? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking for. Maybe if we repeat this about 16 more times, we'll establish unconditionally that Katz is not an expert in this field.
Sure, I don't think it is.
Like he told you earlier, and now you've just come and been told again. Do you remember he told you before? Did your little memory get jogged then when he said what you just said again? Because it literally rung bells in your ears, and I heard you smiling as he said it.
Yeah, is that...
Yeah, he did tell you then. You didn't listen then.
No,
you didn't listen.
you don't let me talk. Okay, fine. Okay,
Right,
I'm not going to talk anymore. Great, thank you.
I think he was talking through Nathan's summary of it.
Of course he was.
That's why I didn't hear it.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Like
It's known as fundamentalist religious zealot mute button. So I don't have to respond to what's being put to me. If I talk through every word of it, that would be a detailed explanation how we have expert, accreditable, fields that people can claim to be experts in the field I discuss as my expertise field, has no expert arena in a university to acquire, it's not unreasonable as your side with billions of people to pick from shouldn't pick one of the wankers that just calls themselves an expert when you've got fields paid for by some of it, my money, to get one of them. Not unreasonable.
And I would say that when he was describing a globe expert, he says somebody that knows everything about the globe. All I thought was he's describing you, Nathan. You are a globe expert. That's why you became flat earther, because you learnt the globe, you learnt it inside and out, learn what they do, what they don't do. When asked questions on what they do and don't do, it only leads to one conclusion: they're obviously not being honest with themselves.
Does Zinder agree with the experts or with the non-experts?
It's a good question.
Do you have you have Coriolis drift, Zinder?
That's a really good question. Get him to answer that. What's his name? You can get him on to unmute himself and answer that.
Goes by Zinder. Did you hear the question, Zinder? Gone very quiet suddenly. Do you realise that this is going to be an outcome that only attacks Blue Marble and NDT, or Sideman, Dan, and Penn State?
He rage quit. He said he's...
Oh, really? Oh, really? Let me get this straight. It got down to the brass tacks of NDT versus Blue Marble and he ran away. How very, very telling indeed.